Live in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Political Fixer Live. I'm Shawna Presley-Vircher, the Political Fixer, and I know that we say this pretty much every week, but we have a huge show for you this week. There has been so many things that have happened in the headlines. We're going to tackle some of the biggest stories, untangle the threads of these stories, and tell you what's going on and what you can do about it. I want to give a special shout out to those of you that are following us on YouTube at Political Fixer and our TikTok family at Political Fixer, especially Jen Finity and others that are part of the Political Fixer family. All right, tonight's show, we've got so many things planned. Again, I know I say this a lot, but there's so much news happening. Here's our top 3 things we're going to cover. First of all, we've got our political buzz story of the week. Our military is apparently being controlled by buffoons. We are going to find out about the scandal that is making its way around the world, not across the country, around the world. What is happening and why this is an opportunity for you to actually get involved in a different and positive way. I know, but trust me on this one. And then the second story is we're going to give you a quick update for you to mark your calendar on a big event we're hosting next week, right here on Political Fixer Live. There's a lot of things to talk about, some updates that we've been promising you, so I'm really excited. So we'll do that as our second chunk of the show. And then our next story is we're going to talk about the new shape of the American voters. We've been talking about this a little bit here and there, but I think it's official that the electorate has shifted and we've evolved possibly past the simple binary party system. We're going to talk about what's going on and 2 stories that contrast each other as to what's happening in our political landscape. One of which you may not have heard. With everything else going on, you may have missed this headline. So I'm excited to share that one with you. So we're also, of course, going to take your comments, questions, discussion, and we want you to jump in. For those of you that are new to Political Fixer Live, we have our Political Fixer team here for you. Our Fixer team tonight includes Sarah and Eddie and Jay Robot, and we also have some of our family members that I'm seeing here as well. I know that I saw Marlene, I think, already hopping on. We've got so many of our Fixer family that are on here, so they'll definitely jump in and help with some of your questions. When you have a question, just throw it in the chat, and our production team is going to make sure that we get to as many of those as possible. And we also want to thank you in advance for all of your likes and gifts and support. It really makes a huge difference, and it's how we get to keep doing this content. We're already at 1,500 likes, so let's dive in to the top story of the week. All right. It is possibly one of the greatest national security, I don't know how you would describe it, leaks, disasters, embarrassments, humiliations in our nation's history, one of the top in our history. And let me explain to you what happened, go a little into the details of what we know, and then tell you why it matters, why we should care, and what you can actually do about it. All right, military intelligence, including allegedly classified information, was exchanged via a third-party app, a cell phone app called Signal. Now, we know that Signal was used and that military conversations were taking place there because they accidentally copied a journalist on the group chat. This story sounds too sensational to be real, so let's just dive in. Okay, here's what happened. There's a messaging app that's called Signal, and Signal is getting to be more popular with journalists, particularly in America, because it's safer than texting. It's a little bit more anonymous. It's more encrypted than regular texting. And so when they're looking to securely communicate with like sources for a big story, then they tend to use Signal to do that. So it's been growing in popularity among journalists. So it wasn't really that surprising when the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, received an invitation for someone to connect with him. That happens to him all the time. What was surprising, as the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic and someone who's been critical of the administration in the past, is that Mr. Goldberg was invited to connect with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Now, so far, what we know is that Mr. Goldberg was invited to this chat. He didn't really have any context and he accepted the invitation. Then all of these other people joined the chat. So, including, okay, our national security advisor, Michael Waltz. Now you got me saying Walls because of him. Anyway, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and we're going to talk more about him in just a bit. J.D. Vance, the vice president, at least in title. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. Joe Kent, who is the nominee to be the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And that's bothersome when you hear the rest of this story. Tulsi Gabbard, the ironically titled Director of National Intelligence. We also had the CIA director, the White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, our resident soulless ghoul of the White House, right? And half a dozen other United States government representatives are on this chat, plus this journalist, Mr. Goldberg. So what are they working on? So at first, he doesn't know if the chat is real. Is he kind of being led to something? Is it fake? Is it AI? Are they trying to kind of rope-a-dope him and get him to publish a fake story saying he was talking to all these people? But then the chatter starts. And when the conversation starts, it becomes real to him. He understands I'm actually on the chat with actual government officials. And how does he know this? Because they start having conversations about whether or not and when they should bomb people. Just on Signal, just openly having this conversation. And they had all these reasons. Should they do it now? Should they do it later? And they're talking about, well, if we do it now, will it cause gas prices to spike? Will it hurt 47's approval ratings if we bomb other people? Will they get anything in response from Europe? Like, it's going to cost us money and time and effort to bomb these people. Will Europe pay us back and actually appreciate us for taking the time to bomb someone? So they're having this conversation about eradicating human life. Never once is there any moral discussion, just to be clear. Not that we would expect it at this point, but I'm going to continue to point out the zero ethics in this administration. It was all political strategy, political advantage. There was also no listed pending safety issue, also, to be clear. None. They never discussed that. In fact, a couple of times in the threads that were shared that I read, they are saying we could do it now, we could do it in 4 weeks from now. It doesn't really matter, right? So there was no impending doom that they were looking at. They're just going to eradicate some people. And in addition to that, they start bashing our supposed allies in Europe. J.D. Vance says, I hate bailing Europe out again. Pete Hegseth says, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. Reality star guy and Fox News host says, what? Okay. So the question is, all of this is happening. There's so much to dissect here. And we're going to go deeper into this. But this story leaked within hours ago. I would say 24, 36 hours ago. And other pieces of the story are coming out. And when I saw all of these insults to Europe, the first question I had is this story going to carry across the pond? Are people going to know this story, or is it going to kind of die out really quickly here? Is it just going to be social media only? Every outlet is covering this. And in fact, some of the information and the finer points I got to source this story came from BBC and the India Times, including those quotes that our administration said about Europe. So that's awkward. Then it gets worse. They start sharing the exact military strategy, including classified information on this cell phone app. So this is Goldberg's quote about what was shared. He says, I will not quote from this update or from certain other subsequent texts the information contained in them, if they had been read by an adversary of the United States, could conceivably have been used to harm American military and intelligence personnel, particularly in the broader Middle East, Central Command's area of responsibility. What I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of this Signal conversation, is that the Hegseth post contained operational details of the forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, the weapons the U.S. would be deploying, and the attack sequencing. In other words, if someone had gotten their hands on that quick enough and first, They would have known we were coming, and that would have been deadly for our American troops. All right? Very serious stuff here. So why should you care? Because I get that for some people, they say, like, I'm seeing this guy say it's a nothing burger. That's interesting, Thomas, because this type of national security leak actually has huge implications. It's not just about this one conversation. Let's start with the fact that Signal is not a military secure way of communicating. It is not. How do I know this? The Pentagon controlled by this administration, said just a week ago that it's not a safe way to communicate. In fact, they sent out a briefing, a warning to all military personnel and higher up staff saying that you should not use the Signal Messenger app, that it contains, quote, a vulnerability. They said that Russian hacking groups were using malicious code and espionage techniques to intercept sensitive information. Okay, so that's not me saying that. That's the Pentagon, right? And so if you don't care about the safety and security of our military secrets, then you're either being a complete hypocritical liar or you're not an American patriot. Those are your options. Now, if you don't understand the story, that's what we're here to discuss. I'm here to explain to you why this is a big deal. But if you don't have a problem with our military secrets being compromised that could kill our American troops, then you're not somebody that I'm communicating with anyway. Also, Signal is not compatible with government phones, because government phones have extra encryption and security on it. You can't just go there and then download Clash of Clans on your government phone and start playing games while you're in these boring meetings. No, you actually have to make sure that only cleared apps get on your government phone. So if they're using Signal, that means they're using their personal cell phones. And that's a huge problem, because cell phone signals that are not from the government, those signals just bounce from regular cell phone towers. And so it's easier to hack into them. Something that China has done with our American phones, something that Russia has done with our American phones. So this is a problem from a security issue, just using the phones, not even counting Signal. Okay, but they're US cell towers, right? They're getting these messages in the United States. How dangerous can it be? Oh, it gets worse. Remember when I said there were other people on the text chain, the war group chat? One of those people was Steve Witkoff. Now, he's the American envoy to Ukraine. Would anyone like to guess where Steve was when he was receiving these Signal messages? We have his flight records. We know exactly where he was. He was taking meetings. He was doing his job in Moscow. He was receiving these cell phone messages in Moscow using their cell phone towers. So our data was going through on non-government phones in Russia on their cell phone towers. There's a reason that we have processes for classified information. All of these people have people that work for them. They follow them pretty much everywhere. And if they need to communicate, they just say, and we've seen this all in movies and television shows, hey, get me a secure line. Okay, no problem. And these people set it up, and then there's a way to communicate effectively and safely. And in top level informations, you can't do it by phone at all. A secure phone, Air Force One, it doesn't matter. You have to be in what they call a SCIF, a secure area to talk about this stuff. You know who knows all of these rules really well? Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State. He was a U.S. Senator for years. He has been on intelligence committees. He knows the processes and procedures for secure information. And at no time when they were chatting back and forth did he or anyone else say, hey, we're not supposed to be talking about this here. This isn't secure. No one stepped in. In fact, they set it up pretty uniquely. They set up the text chain to auto-delete after a few days. This is highly illegal, highly illegal. Why? Because even when you're talking about military situations, even when you're discussing classified information, there is a method for record keeping. Why are they using Signal instead of using official channels? Because it means that there is no recovery of any of this communications later, and none of them will have any accountability for what is said or what they do. Will they commit war crimes? How do we know? Have they followed procedure? No way to tell. Did they do things properly before ending human lives? We'll never know. We'll never know. Why? Because they are communicating on unofficial channels that are not something that we can subpoena, that the U.S. Senate committees cannot review easily. This was an attempt to subvert our Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, right? So this is why they're using back channels, right? In my opinion, that is the only thing that makes sense. And let's be very clear. This administration has never, ever cared about security issues. That whole thing about Hillary Clinton and her email server, that was so prominent that when they did an analysis of the number one word that was associated with Secretary of State Clinton during her presidential run, it was emails. And the idea is, well, nothing happened, but it could have. Right? We should be concerned about her care of national security. Now, we knew that was all nonsense. Most of us knew anyway, but you knew when we knew 100%. It's when he started throwing classified files in a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. Like, that gave us a pretty big clue that securing our national secrets was never a priority for this administration. But this is a glimpse into how this entire administration, not just 47, we know who he is. We know how he behaves. I'm talking about people that are entrusted with a very sacred job. The head of defense, the secretary of state, the head of the CIA. I mean, these are sacred positions. And whether or not it was laziness and it's just easier to chit chat on Signal on their personal cell phones, whether it's incompetence, they really do not understand how classified information works, or whether they are just protecting themselves and they're covering up something, it doesn't really matter what the motive is. The bottom line is they put our country and our troops at risk. And it just gets, we got to get one more point. We're going to do a call to action. We're going to do our and so what can you do about it? And believe it or not, that's fairly positive. We've got a ray of sunshine here. But I got to point out one more thing before we pivot to our call to action. I know it seems ridiculous when we're talking about guys that'll just cavalierly murder other people just because, right? For political points or to gain. We know who they are. But we have to point out the lying. We have to point out the lying because otherwise we are just yielding to it. We are getting used to it. We have to keep bringing up how outrageous it is. When the journalist Goldberg, he reached out to the White House and he basically, like a journalist, asked for clarifying information. And one of the things he did, he removed himself from the chat. And then he reached out to the White House and said, is this authentic? Were these genuine communications, right? And Brian Hughes, the spokesman for the National Security Council, responded 2 hours later. He confirmed that yes, this Signal group was real, that yes, this appears to be an authentic message chain. We are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain. Okay, the journalists added is problematic. I don't know why or who they thought they were adding, but it's almost secondary. Why were they using Signal to begin with? Why were they passing around classified information on a non-secure channel? That is the question. That is the big smoking gun issue. And they have done nothing but deny, deflect, and outright lie all day about this. Hegseth is like, I don't know what you're talking about. We were just chit-chatting. There was no classified anything. We were talking about war. Okay, he has the text, but you do you. Tulsi Gabbard pretended like she had complete amnesia. Like she had landed on a mountain in the middle of a soap opera set, could not remember anything. What was said? She couldn't remember. Was she using her personal cell phone or her government cell phone? She didn't know. And then they said, was there classified information shared? And she's like, absolutely not. So which is it, that you don't remember what was shared, or you're sure there wasn't classified information? Oh, I'm sure there wasn't classified information. Great. What was shared? Oh, I can't tell you that for security reasons. Lord, grant me the strength. Okay, so she was just twirling herself up, and 47 did what he does best. He played stupid. And this is an easy fallback for him, but even so, like, he hammed it up. When a journalist asked him about this incident, he not only pretended he didn't know anything about what happened, he literally pretended that he didn't understand what signal was. What are you saying? What signal? Signal? What is it? Like, just completely lied. Just completely lied. So, okay, there is a saying. If you put a clown in a castle, that doesn't make him king. It just turns the castle into a circus. And that is exactly what has happened here. We knew that the reality star, supposed woman abusing, supposed alcoholic, that he wasn't going to be a great defense secretary. We knew that. But this is particularly bad, right? This is just missing an easy layup. And let's talk about, speaking of people that normally miss easy layups, the Democrats. Normally, and we've seen this, they are like, I don't know, should I have an opinion? Should I say something? Should I express a strongly worded memo? But this time, they are stepping up. As of now, I have seen a letter from House Minority Leader Jeffries calling for the resignation of both Waltz and Hegseth. I have seen multiple Democratic senators questioning people already on the Hill. I have seen multiple Democratic representatives on the news explaining this to people. This one, they have been known to miss, some easy ones in the past, but this one they are taking and running with. It should be a very easy unifying issue. They put our troops at risk. They did not follow military security. We are less safe with them in charge. Get rid of Waltz, get rid of Hegseth. This is a very simple message that should be bipartisan. I understand that for some people, they're just going to be MAGA till they die, and bless your heart. But you know what? For most Americans that still believe in democracy, patriotism, and protecting our troops, for them, it's a big deal, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. So here's what you can do. And it's actually positive this time, gang, because I know we have been doing so much work and so much heavy lifting, but you get to make positive steps forward if you would like. If you care about this issue, there's a few really simple things you can do to keep it going. First of all, they want this to disappear. They want to say this is no big deal. They want to say that, they want the press to just not pay attention. I was worried because it's a little complicated, right? That's exactly what would happen. But it is catching fire. This story has gone all the way around the world. It is hitting not just the main press, but I saw a British podcast earlier that was talking about this. People are paying attention, and rightfully so. If the United States military is less safe, everyone in the world is less safe. This is a big deal to them. They're paying attention. So let's keep up the conversation. So what you can do is you can post about this on social. You can post articles that people write. You can create videos on your social channels and take a piece of this and explain it. Here's a quick thing you could do. Say, I don't know if you saw this story. Let me do a 2-minute recap for you and tell you why it matters. Or here's a question if you saw this story that you might have. Is this a big deal? Like, why is it a big deal they use Signal? Let me explain that to you. Do a 2, 3, 4-minute quick explainer video and bring people into the conversation. That's something you can do to keep this going. You can write to your local newspapers. You can call your local news channel and ask them to keep writing and reporting about this. Just keep the story going. This is very important. Give traffic and clicks and comments to news outlets online that are reporting on it. That will also encourage the story to keep going, right? Then the second half of this is, if you would like, you can call Democrats in the House and the Senate. And honestly, you should call Republicans as well. If you have a Republican representing you, I know sometimes it feels futile, but this is national defense. And I have seen a couple of quotes. It's slow. This story is still evolving, but I have seen a couple of quotes from House Republicans shocked at what's happening and really angry and vowing to look into this. I know that it sometimes feels like that's not the case, but we've got to remember that these people are already staring down the barrel of their reelection. right? That is going to be here before you know it. And not all of them are safe MAGA seats. So call them. And here are a few talking points if you would like. First of all, that if you call a senator, tell them what a great job the senators did in their hearings so far. You can watch these for free. Wagner did a great job. Kelly Fraser just mentioned John Ossoff was fierce in his questioning. So John Ossoff from Georgia, he did a great job. I saw a number of clips. You can see them for free on YouTube and other places. Senate Intelligence Committee. There's a lot of easy ways to Google that and catch a quick clip of it. So tell them they did a great job. We're always telling them to do more and to do something. Here they are doing something. So recognize that. If one of them actually, wrote a letter or posted on social, acknowledge that, right? And I see someone on there that says, oh, you care about this, but you don't care about this other issue. First of all, you don't know me. You don't know what I care about. That's the first thing. But secondly, this is what you do, right? You take something that's really important if you're MAGA, right? And you don't want to talk about the thing. You want to go over here and distract and divide, and definitely you want to punch down, in this case, against immigrants, right? You think I don't care about open borders. No, I do. I do care about open borders. I'm really, really upset about the fraud immigrant that we have in the White House right now, stealing billions of dollars in Starlink contracts and wrecking our government. Start with that immigrant and then get back to me. All right, Jason? All right. The other thing is, when you call the Democrats in the House and the Senate, ask them to investigate and then impeach Hegseth and Waltz. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Why not all of them? Because we need to go for something reasonable, something targeted, right? The Waltz was the one who started the chat. He is in the defense. It is ultimately his responsibility. He predicated it. But the other thing you should know is that Hegseth is the one, and we haven't seen these, but according to sources that have been verified, he's the one that shared the classified information on the chat, right? So these are the two people, Waltz and Hegseth. Keep it targeted, ask them to investigate and impeach, keep the story alive, and thank them for standing up for us, right? We got to be really clear here. This administration is not a bunch of like genius supervillains, right? They're just clowns that cheated and scammed their way to the top. That's who they are. And there's not that many of them. I mean, they're firing thousands of people to the left and to the right of them. How many times have we heard the same names over and over and over again, right? It's the same people running this clown show. So if we start targeting this messaging and pushing back, this is an effective way to slow down a lot of the damage that they're doing. They have to be held accountable. And in order to do that, there's a lot of things we can do. There's some things that Congress should be doing. It seems like they're getting this one. They were a little slow on the uptake before, I will grant you that, but they're getting this one. This should be a unifying issue. One other quick thing that people are saying. I'm already seeing the talking point like, oh, this guy was a Democrat who reported that. He gave a lot of money to Hillary. He's not trustworthy. This is a hoax. He lies all the time. He's not reliable. Then why did you put him on a military chat? Let's assume everything you're saying is true, Precious. Why did you put him on a classified military chat? It's not, let's be clear, I don't think this gentleman is at all what they're making him out to be, but it's your job to guard our military secrets. So if he's so awful, it's still your fault. It's still your fault. So, just don't fall for the nonsense, right? Okay, here we go. So we are going to continue to push back. And I know this was a big, chunky story. I do understand that. And I understand military stuff can be a little intimidating and also a little divisive. People feel different ways about how our military can and use force. But one thing that we as a country have come together on, particularly in the last few decades, is no matter who our commander-in-chief is, no matter what we think about the orders that may or may not be given out, we still protect our troops and their families. We still respect our veterans. Those are sacred things, right? And so we need to make sure that this is something that we center on the facts, we stay focused in the messaging, and again, we provide really positive encouragement to anyone who is willing to do the right thing here, Republican or Democrat, and stand up for us. All right. I know that there's so many comments that you guys have. Thank you for letting me get through that very juicy story. We are already at over 30,000 likes. And before we pivot to our next story, I want to thank Danny Donnell and Caroline Willette for sending some different roses and gifts. Hey, Rachel also sent things. People are saying, let's see, please attend a National Day of Peaceful Protest on April 5th. I think you can go to Indivisible and learn more about that, so that they wanted me to share that with you all. Delirium 811 says, the level of incompetence is staggering, but not surprising. You are correct, Delirium. No one not, especially when we're looking at this cast of characters. I mean, again, we're talking about a guy that starred in the real world. Like, this is not someone who has vast intelligence as far as we know. But my hope was that we could at least coast for a little while until things got really complicated. The fact that we're missing these easy layups, which is, communicate securely, is really bothersome. Can you imagine this crew trying to do what the Obama administration and his team did with Osama bin Laden? Are you kidding me? Could you imagine that? People having access to that information and those communications? So it's really a problem now. And it is serious, but we want to tackle this before it gets even more dire, right? And Nicole realizing Hegseth was on the Real World. Yeah. Okay. Pumpernickel Crouton, the visionary girl. Oh, you sent gifts. Thank you so much. Boba Femme, also love that name, by the way. All right, let's keep going. I know you guys have lots of conversation. You're sharing events, you're sharing things you're participating in. Please keep doing that. We want that. This is a great group. Our Political Fixer family on TikTok and YouTube, they are so supportive. So if you have something like something you're organizing, a group you're supporting, someone that's doing something, please feel free to share that in the chat. This is your time as well. We want you to get that information out. So, Sarah's correcting me. Duffy was the one on Real World. Hegseth was on Fox News. I have their actor profiles backwards. That's my bad. Thank you for correcting me. Our chief of staff and producer, Sarah. All right, let's move on to updates. All right, Tesla takedown. We've got Sean Duffy. Yes, he was the one on the Real World. And then also Road Rules, someone's telling me. Okay. We had some comments from some of you last week on the last Political Fixer Live that some of you weren't getting our emails. And we really appreciate you letting us know that, because then we looked into that. And it turns out some of you weren't getting our emails. We communicated with our provider, and it turns out that we were growing so fast, that our list was growing so fast that they were throttling us. So long story short, yay for that being a problem, and that's amazing for the Political Fixer family, but it's still a problem. So what we're going to do is we spoke to some executives at a great mail provider. We're going to be sharing their information with you soon, because they're going to be offering all of you deals as well. So if any of you have lists, large or small, that you're communicating with, we've negotiated some savings for you there and some special promotions. So we'll be bringing all of that information to you, migrating over, and you should be getting emails again from us this week. But if you're not part of the Political Fixer family yet, and you haven't signed up to get these free updates and first access to everything, you can do it. It's super easy. We do not sell your data. We do not spam you. You get on politicalfixer.com. That's politicalfixer.com. And you just fill out the contact information. And if you want, you can even let us know specifically what you're interested in. You want to know what's happening with Political Fixer Live and media. You want to get involved in some of our political advocacy. You want to work on equal rights now, our goal to get women in the Constitution finally with equal rights, whatever it is. You let us know, and we'll make sure you get that information. Now, I want to give you something to mark your calendars with. We've got some more news to cover, but first I want you to mark your calendars, because next week, Tuesday, April 1st, yes, I understand it's April Fool's Day, but you know what else it is? It's the week of my birthday, and we're going to be doing a Political Fixer birthday bonanza live here, Political Fixer Live, Tuesday, April 1st, and you're all invited. Invite your friends, 9 p.m. Eastern. Let me tell you what's happening. It's going to be a special show. Super excited about this. Thank you for the happy birthdays. Oh, wait, first is your birthday? Eddie's birthday is 2 days from now. We got a bunch of Aries in the house. That does not surprise me. Okay, one of the things we're going to be doing, we are going to be releasing the latest Political Fixer edition of my book, A Fearless Voice. Now, some of you have already requested, and I hope received, your free email copy, your free electronic copy of A Fearless Voice. If you would like to get this book for free and read a little bit of it so you can join in the conversation from that perspective, just go to politicalfixer.com. It's 100% free. Let us know. We still have a few copies we can give away, and then we'll make the other copies in paperback and hardback available for you. What is this book? Well, it's interesting that you ask. So this is the true story of how I became the political fixer. And the real story is that I had a client who, I have to say this for legal reasons, who allegedly became a stalker. It was extremely violent, it was extremely scary, and it was extremely public because he was a D-level celebrity. And through that, I went from someone who was an advocate behind the scenes in the justice system to someone who became a victim in the justice system. And I witnessed that dysfunction and corruption and just frustration and danger firsthand. So this changed me from being someone who tried to take clients and do good every once in a while when I could. I had a business, and when we could, we did pro bono work or work for advocacy organizations, to someone who became an advocate full time. That's what happened. And there's a lot of twists and turns in there, but I really hope you guys like it. But the main reason I'm hoping that you read it is because when I say that I was down on the mat, that doesn't begin to describe it. Everything that you see right now, the joy, the confidence, the feeling like I could be out here talking to all of you, feeling like I was worth anything, feeling like I could make a difference, all of that was gone. My entire light was gone. I felt completely hopeless. And so it does tell about getting to that dark place, but then it talks about how I get back up off the mat and clawed my way out of that dark hole inch by inch by inch. So I don't want for money to be the reason you don't get this book. I want to share it with you. I want you to be a part of this. We released a version of this several years ago, and it was top 25 in the category of social advocacy. And so I'm very proud of that, but we've added new chapters in light of everything that's going on, because the current events definitely tie to what happened with me. So I want you to get this. Again, free. Go to politicalfixer.com. Tell us you want the electronic copy. We will get it for you. And then we'll make sure that you all have promo codes and special access the second it's available for purchase. If you would like signed copies or hard copies, we'll make sure that you get those as well, starting on Tuesday, April 1st. So that is what I want to definitely start with. But there's other things that we have to share. So what I love, I can't see all the comments because they go so fast, and I love you guys. We're already at 42,000 comments. We're talking about some really meaty stuff, and you're sticking with us and talking about some tough issues. And yet I see the trolls coming out, and that's how I know we're starting to get our swagger back, right? Whenever we were down right after the election lost and Kamala Harris lost, and everybody was like, oh, we're winning, we don't have to mess with them anymore. But you can tell we're all getting our collective swagger back because the doofuses are coming out, right? Like all of the, oh yeah, and I hate you, and you're wrong, and you're just a stupid girl that needs to shut up, right? Like all of them, they're all out in force. So welcome, my little trolls, because you are a sign that it's working. You just give us more fire, I gotta tell you, so keep at it. Okay, the other thing is, speaking of do something, speaking of what we can all do, right? You all have been so supportive and providing suggestions and guidance and links. You've been sending me other videos, other ideas, other organizations, and you're like, what can we do? How do we get organized, right? And so we responded to that, and our do something is also going to be unveiled on next week's show. And I got to tell you, it's bigger than we originally planned. We kind of started working on world domination plans and they grew. So we've been teasing this for a while. It took a while to develop, to have a home and a space for all of you. And so we want to make sure that you all have a home in what we're working on, but more importantly, I'm very excited to share this with you next week. We have built a vehicle to amplify what you are working on and provide you with tools and resources and connections to each other. Okay. I know TikTok is a little glitchy, so some of you are saying you're having issues. If you're having trouble, you can definitely hop over to YouTube at Political Fixer. Before we dive into our next topic, then I want to make sure that you know that if you missed any of this, or if you missed next week's show or any other show, then you can get it for free at any time at Political Fixer on YouTube. You can share it easily with people that aren't on TikTok. You can find a certain segment, but also you can feel free to take chunks of it and use it to create your own content. If you want to create videos about some of the stories we're talking about, use this content, use this information as your cheat sheet and take a piece of it and run with it. That's what we're here for. So Walnut, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate you. Okay, let's go to our next story. I believe that the American electorate is changing. I want to tell you how, and this is going to be more and more relevant in the weeks and months ahead, okay? We used to define everything on a spectrum of how liberal or conservative you are, right? Now, I could go for a long time on why I never thought that was a line. I kind of thought that was more like a circle because, as you get to a point, you've got this extremist drop off that is not really representative of most of the country, right? But for sake of discussion, this idea of liberal versus conservative used to define who we followed, who we believed, how we got involved, and ultimately who we donated to and voted for. But we're seeing a shift, right? We're seeing a shift in what we're demanding of our leaders. It's not just, are you centrist? Are you a little to the right? Are you moderate? Are you to the left? It's really, how much are you willing to fight for us? How much are you willing to fight for our country? How much are you willing to stand up and yell the truth, even when it's unpopular? Are you someone that's going to stick up for someone no matter what? Or are you going to turn your tail and run the second that you get a bad poll number saying we should kick that group to the curb? Are you someone that is going to say something even when other people might get upset that you're holding things up? Or are you going to stand there in the middle of the street and stop traffic if you have to, if it means that you're protecting democracy? That spectrum of cowardice versus bravery, doing something versus running and hiding, that is how we're judging our leaders right now, to the point that we're willing to overlook certain things that we don't have in common, right? Let me tell you two contrasting stories, one of which you may not have heard yet this week. All right. We're seeing this shift in voters and the responses and how people are stepping up. I'm going to show you the good and the bad. Let's start with the bad. To paraphrase Kenny Rogers, we're going to talk about people that everyone considered the cowards of the county, or in this case, the country. All right. You know how this administration is doing all kinds of illegal things, right? Just breaking stuff, not going through Congress, shipping people off to other countries that have not broken laws, little things like that. One of the only things slowing them down right now is the court system, and they know it. So U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has vowed to seek sanctions against any attorneys or law firms, and this is her quote, who engage in frivolous, unreasonable, and vexatious litigation against the United States. She doesn't mean the United States, she means them, right? Just to be clear, them as people. She doesn't mean the country. She's not trying to protect the country. A few things. Who's going to decide if a lawsuit is frivolous? Who's going to decide if they have broken these rules? She will. She will unilaterally decide. There will be no panel of judges. There will be no tribunal. There will be no, American Bar Association organization of their peers. No, they're just going to decide it. But there's another point here that I think we need to point out because it's important. She said frivolous, unreasonable, and vexatious. What does vexatious mean? I wanted to confirm. I could kind of guess, but I looked it up. I'm sure she was very proud of using it, but it means annoying or frustrating. So they're not even saying that if you use the law as a weapon and you're targeting and harassing someone, that they will fight back. No, they're saying if you annoy us, then we will come after you. We will harass you. We will try to shut you down. Sanctions, bar license, make it where you cannot practice. Think about that. If you annoy them, they will unilaterally decide to target you and your ability to practice the law. This is outrageously unconstitutional. And I know it's hard to be outraged all the time, but even in the scheme of things, we have to stop for a second because we are supposed to have balanced halls of power. We already saw Doge take off one of those beams of power, right? Which was Congress. Congress is supposed to have checks and balances. They gave it up. They let Doge just run wild with whatever they wanted. And now to target the judicial branch, the legal branch, extremely dangerous and right out of a dictator's playbook. This harms America. And even now, as depressing as things can feel when you have a convicted felon in the office of the White House, I understand how depressing that is, but we still held on to some semblance of the idea of justice, and they are just wrecking that. So obviously, this is very serious. When you're targeting law firms, you're targeting the law, you're targeting our Constitution. So these firms that were targeted by the administration, they stood up for the United States and they said they would fight for democracy every step of the way, even if it cost them every dime. I'm lying to you. That's not at all what happened. They folded like a house of cards. Absolutely folded. Let me tell you what happened. So 47 targeted a large firm known as Paul Weiss. So that's Paul, comma, Weiss, two last names, not a guy named Paul Weiss. And so 47 got his little crayons out, and in an executive order, he said that this law firm, Paul Weiss, was barred from doing business with the federal government and with a list of federal contractors. He said that the firm's employees were stripped of any security clearances they had. He limited their access to federal buildings, and he barred the Paul Weiss attorneys from future employment in the federal government. So what did this super wealthy, super powerful army of attorneys do? They begged for mercy. They agreed to a list of ridiculous demands. All right, they rolled over, they gave up, they took the scales of justice, they bashed them with a hammer. They basically just kowtowed to this dude. This is specifically what they agreed to. This is a quote from an organization called the American Prospect. The agreement that Karp, that's the head partner guy at Paul Weiss, signed is extraordinarily humiliating. It includes a pledge to devote $40 million in pro bono work to what 47 wants them to give work to, his causes. Among them, he is supposed to form a president task force to combat anti-Semitism. I am, of course, for combating anti-Semitism. I'm not for rounding up Muslims and kids that protest, just to be clear, and that's what that really means. The firm has also pledged not to discriminate against clients with political views, meaning take more Republican clients if we tell you, and to cease any DEI. Fire anyone who is differently abled, LGBTQ, a person of color, a woman. We all know the drill. Look at this administration, right? So this was not a lengthy battle that was at risk of bankrupting the firm, and they gave in after years of fighting him since the first term. This wasn't something where there was a lot of jockeying and negotiating behind the scenes and they finally got worn down. That executive order was signed on March 14th. They announced their surrender a week later. Now, what do you think happened? Do you think that 47 was like, okay, good. I'm glad I sent a message. Let that be a lesson to all of you. I'll move on to something else and leave the legal community alone. No, because we exist here on this planet of reality, and we've all met bullies before. What happens? They keep going when it works. So now he's got dozens of other firms that he's targeting. It has completely upended the legal communities. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the cowards on our political spectrum for this week. Now, let's flip it. Let's talk about something positive, right? And somebody's mentioning they did this with Columbia University too. Exactly the same thing. They made a list of outrageous demands. Columbia gave into it and they said, just kidding, more demands. That's what bullies do. Okay, let's talk about what's working. We talked a lot about what's not working. Has anybody been following AOC and Bernie and their travel around the country? Now, let me be clear. Politically, I am not exactly in line with AOC and Bernie. I'm not. But you can't argue with results. Let me tell you what's happening right now, okay? So Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, lovingly known as AOC, and Senator Bernie Sanders drew huge crowds at a rally in Denver, Colorado. And they are calling this their Fighting Oligarchy Tour, all right? They were expecting 11,000 people. 34,000 people showed up, right? And that was just in Denver. Voodoo is right. That was just in Denver, right? And let me tell you something about what happened here. So a few things. First of all, Bernie Sanders ran for president, as many of us all remember, and he drew a decent crowd then. He said this was his loudest, largest, and most enthusiastic crowd he's ever had. They are sensing something special in the air. On a personal note, I got a call today from someone who is extremely moderate. They're Democrat, but they're in South Florida. They're prominent in the business community, and so they're Democrat light. They don't want to they're definitely not AOC and Bernie yet. This person watched the speeches and he says, I got to tell you, I agreed with everything that Sanders had to say. Wow. Okay. Why is that? Let's talk about that for a second. First of all, this person is listening, and they're willing to listen because the leaders that are right in front of them are not up to the task right now, right? They're not in love with their current congressperson. I'm not going to embarrass that person by saying who it was. They are not someone that feels really close to the Democratic Party right now. They definitely are not in line with this administration and with what's happening with MAGA. That is not something they believe. They're looking for a home. And so they're ready to listen to a different message, even if that message comes from someone that they consider to be an imperfect messenger. Right? That is so important. So right now, this is our chance. This is our opportunity to work together and have conversations and break down these barriers, right? I'm not talking about with knuckleheads that are like, oh yeah, we all know those people. Do not feed the trolls, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying with people that are in your community, or maybe your family members or friends that voted one way or lean one way, maybe invest in them a little bit more. Maybe have these conversations, because there is a very large segment of people that are having buyer's remorse right now, or a pretty large segment of people that didn't vote at all, that are like, listen, I just didn't think it would be this bad. Yeah, I knew it'd be chaos. I didn't think it'd be this kind of thing. We can have discussions about should they have known all that, but it doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us anywhere. This is where we are now. So if we want to make gains that are sustainable, we need to organize. So that doesn't mean sell down our values down the river. That's not what that means. If they say something like, yeah, but you got to admit trans people are weird. No, no, they're just fighting for their right to exist peacefully and safely. Do you understand how harmful it can be? Let me explain that to you. I'm not asking you to be putting on a rainbow sweatshirt. That's not what I'm asking, but just please understand how harmful it is. I'm talking about having discourse. I'm talking about insisting that someone fight for the humanity of our values, right? And so that's the kind of conversations we need to have. And if you're at something like, oh yeah, well, I still don't like how he wants to give away all of the student loans. Okay, I'm not going to debate his student loan policy with you, meaning Senator Sanders, right? What I'll say is, can we agree that people not being able to have any student loans because you've wrecked the Department of Education maybe isn't great for families either? Right? Find those different things. Kirsten saying, I do this with my MAGA father. It works. Absolutely. Right? That's the kind of conversations that are hard to have. Kirsten, I really want to honor the fact that you are willing to have a difficult conversation with a family member. That's not always easy, but this is the chance, right? So we've got to talk to people about, listen, we're not going to agree on everything, but could we agree that this is where we can live together, right? Can we negotiate this treaty so to speak, right? Where this is out of control, this is out of control. I'm going to swallow whatever you're going to say that I don't like, right? And just say, and I'm going to stick up for the groups that aren't in the room and say, actually, no, agree to disagree, and here's why, right? And remind people that they're human beings that have a right to exist and be treated with dignity, right? And, Sunshine says we need to focus on shared struggles. That is so true, right? So having these conversations is one big opportunity that we have right now. It might be a personal conversation, but it also might be with your social community. I know that we're very vocal, obviously, about politics on the Political Fixer, but that wasn't always the case, right? This is something fairly new. We just started this last summer. But for some of you, maybe speaking out about certain things, not in an angry way. I'm not saying be one of those people if that's not your natural habitat. I'm saying, listen, will you sign on with me to help fix this one thing? Can everyone agree that we should be standing up for the 87,000 veterans that they're about to fire, right? Raise awareness and try to find some discussion points. Try to get that other side out there, right? Squarefoot Gardening says, don't ask them to admit they were wrong. Say that they were lied to. That is so important, right? Like them falling on their swords, it does nothing for us. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of them will do that. And it's not for us to, it's not our role to judge or what have you. That's not, again, helpful energy. Just, I think, pivoting to what you're saying, right? Like, listen, this guy is a professional con artist. He's a professional con artist, and he had his sights set on us from the beginning. And even people that trusted him, his closest advisors, people that were generals and longtime Washington insiders and advisors to other presidents, even they were fooled. Even they didn't realize how bad it was going to get, right? And our media honestly let us down in trying to protect us and exposing who he was earlier, right? Find a common enemy. Find that common enemy and talk about definitely good things with each other. Now, Ladybug is saying it's hard to have patience with MAGA. I can get that. And if that's not something that is your calling, find another way to organize. Like, there's definitely work to be done in other ways. But I know that one of the most common questions that some of you send me in my inbox or on comments on videos is how to talk to some of your family. And for those of, or maybe friends in your community or your friendship circle or people at your church, it is a tough thing to do. But if you're willing to do it, I'm telling you, now is the time. If you're not, I do not blame you. There is so much other important work to do, right? There's so many other things to do, right? One of you is saying that you have a friend that's like berating you for stuff. Listen, do not engage in that nonsense. If someone's being, dismissive or derogatory, then that's not an open conversation anyway. They're not going to hear anything you're saying. So first of all, protect yourself, protect your peace. That's the first thing. But I'm talking about looking for those crevices of light, those little moments that you actually can have the conversation, right? It's hard when people disappoint you. It really is. It's hard to see people that you respect let you down sometimes, right? It's hard to think about how people have behaved. Not all people, but some people have really let us down, right? But this is a chance to fight for all of us. And the only way that we can really get through this is if we have more numbers. And to build our numbers, we need to start welcoming some people who are ready and willing to listen. That's a really special and important job for some of you. It's okay if it's not the job for all of you. Trust me, I understand that. I want to thank Professor Liberty Esquire, Guava Girl, and others that have sent some amazing gifts. Let me tell you what's happening right now. All right. People are gravitating towards this, let's do something, let's stand up, let's fight, let's do something. That sentiment, that message is pulsating. People are looking for things to do. So what that means, what we can see is that there is essentially a fight for the soul of this country, right? And all of you in your own way are choosing how you are going to be a part of that fight. And we are choosing that as well. We're going to talk more about the specifics of that next week, but I also want to hear from you. What else are you working on? What are you looking to work on? Are you looking to run for office? Have you been volunteering more? Are you trying to organize online? Are you an influencer that is sharing stories about what's happening, right? So definitely share with us what you're working on, how we can help you. You can go to politicalfixer.com, and we have had some email, issues, but your messages that you sent us on politicalfixer.com, those all got saved. Don't worry. We'll just be able to actually respond to you now and it may get through. So that's fun. All right. Do we have any questions? Hey, Rachel is saying, after this, my career is going to be human rights full time. I love that, Rachel. Please let us know how we can try to support that. It is not an easy thing to do, but definitely rewarding. CJ Murphy is saying that the YouTube feed is working great. So she's encouraging more and more of you to join us on YouTube. Love that. And also wants to echo how Bernie and AOC are drawing monster crowds. Absolutely. We're also seeing some House Democrats holding some summits and hearings and town halls with an empty chair for the Republican Congress people that aren't showing up, right? And so I see Shell Morse is asking, I just want to know why the government is just letting all of this happen. That is a long conversation. However, let me attempt to give you a short answer, which is I think that we got caught flat-footed. I think that essentially that a lot of people were in shock and they are not knowing exactly how to respond. So I'm going to use a boxing analogy, as clumsy as it might be. But if you step in the ring and someone punches you in the face, then it hurts. You're shocked for a little bit, but you were kind of expecting it, right? So you know instinctively to swing back. A lot of us in the advocacy community, we felt like we were in the ring for quite some time now. We kind of saw what happened in the first administration. Oh, I love that, Bosch. And so we felt like we were in the ring. We're ready to get going. But for a lot of people that were not as engaged, who didn't really see through him as much the first time, or who just really hold on to this ideal of the democracy will save us, the systems, the institutions will save us. For people that are like that, right? Then they weren't in the boxing ring and got punched. They were sitting down in the audience and somebody just walked up and punched them in the face. That's going to take you longer to respond. You're going to be like, what just happened? Did that really happen? Did anybody see that happen? Oh my gosh, what should I do about that thing that happened? Right? There is a shock and awe thing that is happening here, and that's by design. The reason that this administration and DOJ and all of these bad actors are moving so quickly and breaking things so quickly is because they want to leave us in shock. So by the time we know what's going on, it's too late to put up a fight. So I think some of that shock is starting to wear off. And Audrey is saying, isn't that their job to respond and be prepared? I would say in an ideal world, yes. But I think what many of them think their job is to hold up the strength of the institutions. And I don't think many of them have had to respond to a lot of real life circumstances in quite some time. That's one of the problems with having career politicians that have not had other jobs that are real world jobs in decades. That is a problem on both sides of the aisle. When you have someone that has not actually had to be accountable to actual customers and clients, or sit down with their voters, or work hard to get elected, or have a boss, or worry about making payroll or paying for groceries, someone does that for all of them. They go shopping for them, they drive them, they figure out what they're going to eat, they get their clothes for them, they book their haircuts for them. That's how this works. So no, I don't think they're prepared to handle this type of stuff. I think, Ebony Evans, I got this, Ebony, says Republicans have abdicated their responsibility. Yes, absolutely. Chico Gal says that it's time for a third party. Tough to do. I would love for us to have 5 or 6 parties. I would love for us to be more European in that way. And I think right now, what's in front of us, do I think third and fourth parties longer term will be good? Yes. However, there's good news. If you're looking at the Democratic Party right now, it's ripe for the taking. I mean, they're not putting up much of a fight. So if you think that your elected representative is not representing you anymore, find someone to primary them. Find someone that's experienced, that can speak to different types of people, that would represent you and others in your community proudly, not just one segment, that's not just yelling and angry, but actually can offer some solutions. Find that person and primary them, right? And I feel like this idea of, if you're a good Democrat, you won't have a primary. No, that's not how this works. You work for us. And if I have a job in a company, there are employee reviews regularly. I am constantly being evaluated by management. I have clients. Clients are deciding, are they going to renew my contract? That's life. So they have every reason to be held to account and fight for their jobs in an ongoing way, right? And people are mentioning Schumer, right? I don't like some of Schumer's behavior. I don't think he has effectively communicated well, right? There's a lot of things that can be done right now, but one thing we can do immediately is the people that are there, we can continue to pressure them to act. You can get more involved in local organizations, statewide organizations, whether it's your party or other advocacy groups. Don't forget, there's a lot of caucuses and groups that need your help, like the LGBTQ community. There's Black organizations and immigrant organization and women issue organizations. There's so many different groups that need your help, that if you don't want to get involved in the partisan politics of it all, you can find another way to help a group that will welcome you, right? So Professor Liberty Esquire says, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We need to replace the spokes. I love that analogy, Liberty. Thank you. All right. And CJ Murphy says, respond and be prepared to act within the law. I also like the idea that CJ has, get big money out of politics, no stock trades, and term limits. See, these are all constructive conversations we can have moving forward, but we can't do it if we don't have a democracy left at the end of it. So the fact that you're paying attention, the fact that you care enough to ask these questions and get involved, that means so much. And that is how I know that moving forward, we're going to be more than okay. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to get rough. It's been a crazy week. This has been just a very rough series of things, and we're not even seeing the full impact of everything that's happening. But as long as we work together and we stick together and we support each other and we fight, then things will get better on the other side, right? All right. I really appreciate you all. Thank you, Visionary, for sharing those lovely gifts, and all of you. We made it to 73,000 likes on this lovely Tuesday. Please mark your calendars for our birthday bonanza, which really, it will be a reverse birthday because I will be giving you lots of gifts and fun things. Visit us on politicalfixer.com if you would like to get updates first, if you want early access to some of the free resources and tools we'll be offering, if you want to volunteer and get involved, if you want a free copy of the book that's coming out, please go to politicalfixer.com, and we will be upgrading our technology and infrastructure to be able to reach back out to all of you lovely people soon. I hope that you fill out the contact form. Just go to the contact form, tell us what you need or how we can help. We'll be getting back to you in the coming days and weeks. And I want you to ask yourself one thing, which is, what are you going to do this week to take care of yourself so that you have the strength to fight in the future? That's my homework question for you to think about. When things are crazy and you're dealing with your jobs and maybe kids or parents or healthcare issues and just stress and reading the news about what's happening, you accidentally got included in the latest war group chat, things that happen in everyday American life. When you're sitting there thinking about that, what is one thing you can do to protect your own peace and your own mental health so that we can come back fighting next week? I want you to think about that, because you cannot fight for others if you are not taking care of yourself. All right. Rachel saying she went to the rage room. My daughter did that. It's little tiny arms just with a giant sledgehammer. It was really funny to watch. Vivian and 75 Corvette. Okay, 75 Corvette just gave us a super important update. The 1st and the 6th district, thank you 75, of Florida. Congressional update. I know I'm keeping you guys late. Give me 2 more minutes. All right. I just got a text right before this show. Thank you 75 Corvette. The latest early voting, I can't do it because you're actually on my phone right now. I can't look up the number. Don't quote me on this. I want to say it's 80. I think that in District 6, when you look at the number of Democrats who have cast their early votes or come in and voted early, and the number of Republicans, 80 votes separate us in District 6. Right? So if you have not yet gotten involved in that district, then tell your friends about it. Do you know someone in Florida? Can you post on social media? I did call their campaign and ask for call lists. They are completely underwater, but we can still share information and talk to each other and call people we know. That's District 1 and that's District 6. I also want to make sure that you know that there is a Wisconsin special election happening. For any of you who are in Wisconsin or who know people in Wisconsin, there is a special election that is for a state Supreme Court seat. Now, this is really important. How do we know it's really important? Because Elon is spending millions of dollars, and from what I have read, is using some allegedly very illicit, unethical, and possibly illegal campaign tactics to try to flip this seat. Wisconsin's important because that is a flippable state, and you don't want an election denier who doesn't believe in our rights to protect the vote and the sanctity of the end results of the vote to be in the Supreme Court seat. It means the difference in flipping the entire court. So if you can, please get involved in that special election in Wisconsin. It's all the same day. It's all on April 1st. So we'll be covering those election results also here on the show as they come out. So it's the special state Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin, Florida's Congressional District 1, and Florida's Congressional District 6. Now, I want to tell you that I understand that we're going to be outspent. I understand some of these are red areas in Florida, but if you are going to flip a seat, a special election is the time to try to do it. And we just got new numbers today. It is extremely close, especially in the District 6. So don't count it out. We need every possible seat, but also we need to defend it really heavily, even if they do win. Let's show up if we can in whatever way that we can, right? Ebony asked, isn't paying for voting illegal? Yes, heavily illegal. That's what allegedly is happening right now with Musk. But right now, we need people to enforce those laws. So that's what remains to be seen. So we're all going to stay on top of so many issues. But on behalf of myself and my team, I want to thank you for sticking with us for a lot of these really meaty issues. I know we went a lot heavier this week than we normally do. We've got defense military stuff, and we're talking about laws with, litigation with lawyers and their lawsuits and all kinds of stuff. But you know what? It's important. You stuck with us, and I really appreciate you for caring enough to stay educated, to keep me on my toes and make sure I am accurate as well, and for doing everything you can to support me, support each other, and support this country. I am Shawna Presley Vircher, the political fixer. I'll be creating more content, doing more posts, responding to your emails, and I'll see you here next week, Political Fixer Live, April 1st, 9 p.m. Eastern. Be there or be square. No, I'm just kidding. You can get it at any time. Be safe, everyone, and take care of yourselves. All right? Be safe. Talk to you soon.